The National Department of Tourism, together with South African Tourism and the Tourism Business Council of South Africa, addressed media in Johannesburg today on the draft National Tourism Sector Strategy. The strategy is a sector-wide plan and includes deliverables for all major role players in the tourism sector. Joining us now is Victor Tharage, who's the Deputy Director General of the Department of Tourism, and he's responsible for policy, research, monitoring and evaluation. Joining myself and our guest host, Fungai Tarira. Thank you very much for coming through.
My pleasure.
Just let's talk about the World Cup, because everybody's quite euphoric, doing post-mortems about the World Cup, patting themselves on the back. What do you think the World Cup did for brand SA?
You know, what we got, the brand SA, what we got out of the World Cup is something we could never have bought. If you look at the fact that we had up to 32 billion viewers across the world, there's no way that we could have actually reached that number if we didn't have this World Cup. It was worth the investment. And I think over a long term, we're actually going to see the benefits of that particular World Cup through the tourists that are actually going to be coming here. These are places that we wouldn't even have thought of investing money in. And now they know about South Africa and they actually want to come here.
So it's raised the profile of South Africa, and this now goes to the National Tourism Sector Strategy unveiled today, because within it now are different components, moving away from conventional focus on leisure tourism, focusing now on sports tourism and on issues such as business tourism and events. Tell us more.
We are saying that we have grown quite significantly. I mean, if you look back at, say, 1993, we were talking about figures that were around 3 million or so, and now we're talking just under 10 million. But having grown to that significance, we did so with a huge potential still to actually grow further. There's been studies undertaken that are indicating that we can attract up to 24 million people into this country. And I think what we need to realize is that to be able to do that, which is what the strategy now focuses on. To be able to do that, you have got to actually deliberately and boldly go into areas that you have never been before. And this would then include, how do you then make sure that you've got products that are authentic, bring a bit of innovation into those specific products, be more competitive, and be ahead of the pack in terms of the people that you compete with. We've got competitors such as Kenya, Australia, and so on. But we are saying that we need to reposition ourselves altogether.
Staying with the tack of the World Cup, the lessons learned, because people were expecting massive tourism returns and dividends into the sector because of this World Cup. But what we saw shortly before the tournament was Match Hospitality, which was liaising a lot with the various tourism operators and dealing with the tourist infrastructure, reneging on a lot of their promises, releasing over 40,000 beds onto the market because they hadn't promoted it well enough, it hadn't been signed off, all those kinds of issues. So a lot of people who had high hopes for a tourism boom are now sitting with a bit of a depression and debt. Going forward, there's no World Cup, but what you need is confidence building and trust with various operators, hoteliers, lodge owners, bed and breakfast owners within the sector. Definitely.
Let's just go slightly back to the issue of Match. You see, what had happened was that Match had identified they needed about 55,000 rooms, largely for what they called the FIFA family. But at the time when they were releasing these particular rooms, which was not taken off, some of the reasons that came out quite clearly was that you had establishments packed together with a package. And this package would also include flying into South Africa, going into this particular game drive, and so on and so forth. But when you've got that kind of package, it becomes expensive. And to sell those, for them, it was a bit of a difficulty. I'll give you a typical example of Sandparks. Sandparks got its rooms released, and the following day, they were actually reporting that about 50% of the ones that were released the previous day had already been taken up. And I was with some of the Sandparks colleagues the day before yesterday, and they were indicating to me, look, we actually managed to have occupancy rates that are beyond the times that we actually, the normal occupancy rates during these particular times. So we will do a proper impact analysis, because if really, if I just talk off the cuff, what is likely to be the case is that it might be that there are some people that actually reap some benefits, but not necessarily through the match system.
Okay, but I'm just talking about going forward, because what you need is, firstly, some kind of a system of compensation for the losses incurred, but going forward, saying to people, this is a viable sector to invest in. You're going to get good returns because we're going to boost these visitor numbers. What guarantees are there?
You see, what we are saying is that trends are quite clear. There's been growth in areas where the markets are significant. There's been growth in the Chinese market. There's been growth in the Indian market. There's been growth in the Nigerian spend. There's been growth in the Angolan spend. These people are still going to come here. But we are saying that the most important segment that would actually sustain us is to strengthen our domestic tourism component. And that we're going to grow significantly. And that includes what packages are we going to put in place to get people to actually get into that.
Talk to us about those packages, because the national tourism sector strategy intends to grow the number that tourism contributes to GDP to 9.4%, currently 8.7%. So that's a huge contributor to the South African economy. How have you done it?
Indirect.
How have you done it, and how will you continue to do it?
We are going to increase the market share significantly, play in areas that we haven't played before. At home, we're going to make sure that the culture of travel is entrenched. So it's not just about, we were talking today about the middle income group. There's a significant proportion of that currently does not travel at all. The reason for that is because the packages have not reached them, the message has not reached them. And we need to get that message specifically to that category, that segment. And those plans are already in place to say we need to grow that. And we have to make sure that South Africans themselves are also well receptive of the other people that will be coming here, and the service excellence aspect, so that people would always return to this country.
Okay, before we bring Fungai into this conversation, I mean, people talk about the tourism value chain, and I think you've alluded to it. You know, when you talk about innovative products, authentic products, it's not just about hotels, it's about the transportation networks, it's about the catering services, it's about the culture and leisure and curios, etc. All of those people coming in are people who could benefit from added GDP contributions by tourism, a greater cash flow into the sector, and jobs. And I think that's what people are looking for. How many more jobs can be created?
We were coming off a base of about 528,000, and we are saying that by 2015, we should be getting to approximately 800,000. So there is some level of ambitiousness in terms of what we want to do. But we are saying that with the numbers that are here in the country, we are aware that there are so many people that are not traveling currently. There's products that can suit their need, but we need to get the message to them and grow it to that level.
Okay, Fungai, let's bring you into the conversation here. South Africa expected to grow between 2.8% this year, probably 3.2% during the course of this year. The figures will rise with some sort of global economic recovery. But within that continuum, and we also know the high unemployment figure in this country at 25%, it is a concern when somebody talks about growing the market share locally, because some people would say there isn't just enough money for locals to spend on tourism and leisure.
I think the money that people have actually to spend locally has been finding a home in other products and services. And maybe just sort of picking up from what Victor has been saying, it's about trying to convince those people or enlighten those people to actually say, look, there are things within the tourism sector that you actually could be spending on, which will come back to actually benefit the country, as well as just allow you to have a good time. So if that message can actually get out there and get people's spending patterns to change as that comes through, I think that'll obviously be a very positive thing. I just have a question for Victor to say, well, you know, you've mentioned these targets that you actually have in terms of arrivals, in terms of the jobs that you're looking to create. What sort of buy-in, or what levels of buy-in do you have from other policymaker departments to ensure that this actually comes through? I mean, we can look at sports tourism in particular. We've heard of some incidences internationally where athletes have actually been refusing to participate at events simply because the tax regulation did not sit right with them, or other things that are not directly in line with what they're actually traveling for.
Very important, Fungai, because if you look at this strategy that we're talking about, on the 21st of May, Minister launched it, but that was immediately after he had taken it to his colleagues in cabinet. And they endorsed it, and they gave full support for it. So you would have an integrated approach to tourism growth and development, where if we're talking about an attraction that is at a particular place, there will be infrastructure that then supports that, which is coming from a department that is responsible for that particular type of infrastructure. So there is quite significant buy-in. There is buy-in from industry as well in terms of the implementation of this particular strategy. I think it's something we will.
And what about mitigating forces that are beyond your control? The global recession is some circumstance beyond our control. But what it effectively did is push up the oil price and therefore push up the airline ticket costs. It's created a situation where, for instance, we've got major investment in hotel construction. The investors want a return on investment, so they push up room rates, and locals say, I'm not going to pay over 2,000 rands for one night in a hotel. So you want to create a quality destination, South Africa, but you don't want it to be an expensive destination, which has also been a criticism.
We still believe we're a value for money destination. You're talking about issues of competition. And at the core of it, if we're able to actually have as many flights that come to South Africa, the price of flying to South Africa is going to be cheaper. And at the same time, if you've got more people going into these hotels that you're talking about, you would actually then realize that they will realize their profits even if they're not necessarily having to charge exorbitantly. So we are cognizant of that, quite cognizant of that. And we are saying the way to deal with that is to make sure that the supply side and the demand side is well balanced.
Okay, and Fungai asked you a question about buy-in, and I think from a citizen's perspective, I think what people would need as the biggest buy-in is that from the Department of Security and the police services. We saw vigilant, visible policing by the South African police services during the World Cup, which was a gold star for a police force that has taken a lot of criticism and flack. But what the South Africans are saying, sustainability. Is this a new South African police service that we can trust, that we can rely on? And international tourists want to know, is this now a safe destination, and what guarantees are there?
I think South Africa has demonstrated that it is indeed a safe destination. We are aware that everywhere in the world, there is some level of crime, everywhere. Wherever you go, you would find some level of crime. But I must say that at a time when we're hosting significant number of people, we have demonstrated clearly that this is a very safe destination, and people can actually come here and enjoy themselves at peace. And that message will be taken out, and we will make sure that it is clear this is a safe destination. And I must say the police have really done well.